The educational system is dead. AI just buried it. Welcome to BSA Talks. We'll be talking about this very interesting subject about where education is going and how artificial intelligence plays into it today.
Hey Dave, how are you?
I'm doing really good. I'm really interested in this topic, not just because I invest in AI stocks.
I actually came across with a few questions, and I wanted to talk to you as somebody that just recently graduated from high school. It was about 5-6 years ago, so sort of recently. And when I was in high school, ChatGPT wasn't really a thing. Well, it was the start of a thing, but it was on the hush-hush because people don't want to get it banned. And my biggest question is, Dave, why are we still teaching kids how to memorize things in a world where AI gives us instant answers?
Memorization has had historically two purposes in human education and human life. One was, of course, to memorize the facts and the data that are required to do your everyday life. That is largely gone. But memorization has been shown to play a very important role in the development of intellectual ability, in the ability to process information. Memorization shapes the human brain, and that requirement hasn't changed. And so I will recite poems and things like that. I learned a lot in poetry. We had to do it in school, and we did it because it enriched our lives, not because we needed to do something with it. I want to share with you something that I've been working on for a long time that is very important to me, and that is a Discord channel for business. On it, there will be a lot of free information, but also access to me, so you can have the ability to ask me questions and I can respond to your particular problems and difficulties and also help you get started. I'm really looking forward to being able to interact with you individually on there. I look forward to seeing everybody on there, and I will be waiting for you. Now, let's get back to our video. So I don't think that I think that learning, including rote learning, will continue to be important. For example, I've always heard it said, I remember some idiot educator in Seattle a few years ago said, we don't need to teach history because if the kids are interested in it, when they grow up, they can look it up. What will they look up? How will they know what to look up? Because they won't have a context. And that was what made the statement so incredibly stupid. When you learn history, when you learn English grammar, when you read English literature, you're seeing the world through other people's eyes. It has nothing to do with memorization of facts. It has everything to do with knowing how to think and being a human being.
So as a business owner and a CEO and an entrepreneur, did you rely on memorizing a lot of things? I mean, as a CEO, you probably had 50 to 60 tasks an hour to memorize or to kind of give off to your employees.
There's a difference between memorization and learning how to do something. The answer is no, I didn't memorize very many things except the names of my board members and investors. But I did have to, of course, learn how to do many things. That's kind of the point of business, is if you want to be successful, you have to learn all sorts of things. And that's a kind of memorization, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing. Rote memorization, as I said, has other purposes. It's not to teach you how to do something. It's to give you the intellectual ability to do things.
I see. So should schools start teaching AI literacy at as young as elementary school?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, they should. Just as they should with the internet, and to some extent did with the internet. Remember, the last time the educational system was being upset was when the internet came in. Yeah. And to be quite honest, I've taken more courses in the past 20 years online from some random presenter on YouTube than I have sitting in a classroom.
Well, Dave, speaking of the educational system, how long has it been since it's gotten updated? I mean, we are being taught on a structure that's so old and that hasn't been updated in a very, very long time.
It's worse than that. The educational system was designed for the Industrial Revolution, not for the information age. It's that badly out of sync. It's a century and a half out of sync. And that's its problem. It's the purpose of the educational system was to make you a good cog in the system. A system that where you go work in a factory and you'd eventually retire and that was your life. But that's not the world we live in. It hasn't been the world we live in for half a century or more. And our educational system, as the educational system, has failed in updating that way. But the educational system has been dramatically augmented by the amount of information and the amount of ways of acquiring that information that is available to everybody online, and now increasingly with artificial intelligence.
So can they use artificial intelligence to update the educational system?
I think the use of artificial intelligence to update the educational system is being done despite the education establishment instead of by the educational establishment, and I think it's working quite well that way, although I really do wish the teachers unions would get out of the Stone Age and teach this stuff to the students, because they're going to have to operate. Remember what I've said. It's not that the artificial intelligence is going to unemploy people. It's that their jobs are going to depend upon their ability to use it. We ought to be teaching that in the schools, along with everything else that has to be taught in the schools. And I'm not advocating throwing out reading, writing, and arithmetic. I'm advocating teaching those too, but also teaching how to learn using artificial intelligence and how to operate artificial intelligence to accomplish things.
Well, Dave, you said that you learned on the internet more than you've learned in a traditional school.
For the past 25 years, yes.
College. So why do we say are traditional degrees becoming worthless, or is AI going to take over in that aspect? Do we still need a degree, Dave, or can somebody just hop on the internet, take the course that they actually need in their life instead of wasting their money going to college?
College is much more than just a method of learning something. In so far as college is a method of learning something, yes. Once the other two things happen, the socialization that college brings. You get to meet other people who are going to be contacts for the rest of your life. I'm still using political and scientific and other contacts that I made at Yale 55 years ago. I'm still doing that. My businesses took advantage of that. I wouldn't have learned that if I was on the internet, right? So that's number one, and number two is teaching you how to think. You don't learn that with an isolated course here and an isolated course there. Not only you don't learn it generally, which is a problem, but you also don't learn it specifically. I know that every time I have taken a course online or studied it on my own, I have a good enough knowledge, a knowledge that will help me to use this as a technique in my business. But there are holes in it, there are gaps in it, and my intuition is weakened because of those holes. That was taught in a classroom where you can ask a question of the professor, or the professor knows that that's what's got to be conveyed and does so. Can artificial intelligences do that? Of course they can. Not yet, but they will.
Well, being in that environment, Dave, where you're in a college class, being taught something that is, quite frankly, you're being forced to be taught that certain topic just for a certain thing that you want to be taught. For example, if you're going to engineering, you want to be an engineer, you have to go through prereqs. Mm-hmm. You have to go through all the prereqs in the beginning. That way you can start learning your degree or start learning how to become an engineer.
The technology fields, the STEM fields, are far more hierarchical than the non-STEM fields, meaning there are far more basic things that you have to learn to go this. I'm not saying history and English and literature and things like that are not. They are, to be able to understand what's happened in history, to be able to understand the context of other civilizations who've written things. That's critically important, and there is a hierarchy, but it's not as severe as the hierarchy in the STEM things. That hierarchy is much easier to convey in a formal educational environment, and still is. That doesn't mean that artificial-based technologies should not be used in the college classroom. Absolutely it should be.
So what does even being educated mean in 2025?
What it always has meant. Familiarity with the way the world works, the way people, not just the people in your neighborhood, function, the way they think, what's important to them, their religions if they have any. All of those things are important, it always has been, because in the final analysis, it's not the details we know, it's the interactions and relationships we have with other humans that make us human.
But also, Dave, I don't know if you've heard of this, but there is book smart and there is street smart.
Oh yeah, and both are important.
And both are important, but some people, they get so trapped in that ecosystem where they believe being book smart is 10 times better than being street smart. And by the meaning of street smart, it's not being, somebody that's a gangster or somebody somebody that does bad things and have to be street smart. They've seen and lived experiences in the world.
Well, as a person who spent the past 40 years working with engineers, I know exactly what you mean about the absence of street smart with superb book smart. Of course, both of them are absolutely necessary. If you're street smart without book smart, you can't do anything. You just can't understand and manipulate people. If, on the other hand, you're book smart but not street smart, you can't apply what you know effectively.
You'll get manipulated by people.
And you'll be manipulated by people. And so both of those are absolutely important. Book smart is, of course, far easier to convey in a college or any other educational environment, including online, including through artificial intelligence, than street smart. Street smart is taught in one and only one way, and that's interacting with other people.
And you, as an entrepreneur, Dave, you had to be efficient in both.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to live through.
You have to be able to read a room if you're presenting a financial documents. That's simple, and that's street smart, not education smart.
They don't teach you how to read a room in college.
No, they certainly don't.
How to do the presentation.
They teach you how to do the presentations. You learn how to read a room when you're in the debate club.
Yeah.
But that's also an advantage of college, is it has people together that are of comparable intellectual ability to you, so you interact and cross-fertilize with them, and that's an advantage. Probably the greater advantage than anything you actually learn in college.
So, is the future of learning more about creativity, critical thinking, or just adapting?
It depends. It depends on the field. Adapting is something we all have to do because the world changes all the time. And of course, artificial intelligence is driving change at an accelerated rate these days, particularly in STEM, but not just there. So the answer is yes, we all have to learn how to adapt. I believe that artificial intelligence will enhance, not decrease, our creativity, though, because it means we spend less time working on the grunt work and more time being creative. And I think that that is one of the real advantages of it if used properly, and if people know that that's what they're doing. And that is something that should be taught. People who have used artificial intelligence to do things that are creative, and I'm not just talking about artists, although artists is not a bad place to start, that you teach other people what they did and how they did it, and give them opportunity to experiment.
So we did mention earlier, Dave, that the educational system was created in the
19th century.
19th century, and it's out of date.
Oh boy, is it out of date.
Out of date. So should we build an entirely new model of education from scratch?
No, I don't think we have enough information or knowledge yet to do that, and we may never have that. Education, like everything else, changes with time and shifts. It has just been constrained way too long. I think the fear that was shown by the use of Wikipedia that I mentioned before, the fear that was shown by the use of the internet, the fear that is being shown with the use of artificial intelligence by the teachers is understandable but misdirected.
So Dave, if we spent the first 12 years learning about the past, about our past, about ancient Egypt, we're learning about history, we're learning about math, we're learning all about this. Do you think that our progression as a society is slowing down? Because if we're spending the first 12 years of the new generation, they're learning about old things instead of teaching them how to create or build new things in the future. This is what we have, this is what we accomplished, now how can we make it better?
Well, I don't know about you, but I was learning integral calculus in my first 12 years, so I don't, I don't know about the rest of you. No. Liberal arts education, however acquired, is the absolute essential for a humane society. You have to know what has happened in the past, or you're going to repeat the mistakes. You're probably going to repeat them anyway, but at least they won't be quite as bad. Scientific knowledge, the stuff that you learn when you take a math class or a physics class or things like that, help you do something. The social sciences and history and literature and things like that teach you how to be a person and teach you how to fit in, not just with your own world, although that's important, but with the worlds of all times. Because understanding, if you study 17th century Italy, you can see all sorts of things they did wrong and were confused about. But you also see things that you're doing wrong, our society is doing wrong, that they got right. And learn that the exposure to other societies, just like the exposure to other literatures and things like that, help you see your world more clearly, and you have to live in that world. So no, it's not depriving you of those things, as long as you stick to the basics and don't try to get too carried away. And we can get away from the training people to be drudges in a factory, because very few people are drudges in factories anymore.
So based off of all of that, Dave, based off of what we have been seeing in the last 5 years, how AI technology has been booming in the last 5 years, and we have a very, very bright future for the new generation that's growing up with AI. You know, as somebody that worked in AI industries and created AI programs, what's your biggest fear or hope for how AI transforming?
I would say that my biggest fear and my biggest hope are almost exactly the same thing. And that is artificial intelligence, the use of artificial intelligence to do things, will change the way humans live and work and get their daily bread. I think that's a given. That will happen, because all technology has always done that at all times. It will continue to be the truth with that. And that is a plus and a minus. The minus is leaving people behind who have no grasp of it. We've seen quite often in the STEM world a lot of people left behind that either weren't smart enough or didn't think they were smart enough to work in those fields. I think that's a mistake. Often they were misled in schools into thinking they weren't capable of it when they were. We had that problem with women for many, many, many years, that they somehow were steered away from STEM, which was a complete fiasco, and unfortunately still occurs. I mean, I remember my wife was a mechanical engineer. She was the only one around in the days when she was there, and she got a lot of odd comments about it too. That's wrong, you know, and that's a mistake. I think that artificial intelligence will lead us down paths we cannot even begin to imagine now. Being prepared not for what they're going to lead us down, but for the fact that they're going to lead us down these strange paths, is something we absolutely should be pursuing and studying and understanding. And how do you do that? You look at where it's happened before. Hence history.
Yeah. Don't let history repeat itself.
Don't let history repeat itself.
But it will repeat itself.
Well, somebody said history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
History will repeat itself no matter how hard we try to get things right, because we are human.
Because we're human.
The educational system is obviously out of date, and using AI is not the full solution.
No, but it's a partial solution. And being afraid of AI, like being afraid of the internet and being afraid of typewriters, is not the solution either. Using the technology as it develops is the only alternative you have, because it's going to continue to be there, whether you like it or not.
So it's a start. We will use it as a start. as of now, we are still unfortunately stuck in our ancient ways, but
My view of I'll quote Shakespeare, talk about the history of this, I'll slightly change it. Oh, brave new world that has such entities in it. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a brave new world. And I don't mean Aldous Huxley's book. I mean what Shakespeare meant, what strange the world is and how wonderful.
Yes, sir. Well, Dave, thank you so much for educating us on the educational system itself, telling us how AI is going to help in the future, and our future generation is not doomed.
No, I don't think the future generations are doomed. There'll always be. We're more likely to be hit by an asteroid that wipes out the human race than anything else, in my opinion. And even that's very low likelihood. Thank you all for tuning in. Please, if you like, check the like box to do the subscribe and turn on notifications, and we'll see you next time.
We'll do that one more time.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for joining us today. Would you please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications, and we'll see you next time.